Just 3 ingredients make a bechamel, a mother sauce of French cuisine. And yet it's technique and timing that matter the most in this dish. So let's learn about that on Bon Appetit. First thing we're gonna do is we're going to heat up our milk for the bechamel sauce. One of the reasons a lot of bechamels get lumpy is because cold milk is added to the hot roux. You can avoid this by making your milk hot before you do that. So we're gonna take a cup of whole milk. Don't skimp out on this, not skim, not 2%, go for the full whole milk. And we're gonna put it on low. So now we're gonna bloom a tablespoon of white peppercorns over high heat. Now, a bechamel is by its nature supposed to be a white velvety cream sauce. This makes it a little difficult to add flavors into it because anything that you add could ruin the color of the bechamel. But there is a technique for that. What we can do is, while we're heating the milk up now, we can add a couple of herbs and ingredients and then strain them out when we go to add it to the roux. So what I've got here is some basil and thyme leaves, some big chunks of shallot, and 1 bay leaf. And I've got a teaspoon of our bloomed peppercorns. Just put them right in there, stir it around a little bit. And now we're gonna let that heat up on low for about 10 minutes to let those flavors really seep in there. Because every stovetop is different, what you're actually looking for is the milk to start forming some bubbles around the ingredients or around the edge of the pan. You do not actually want this boiling. Be sure to stir this lightly every minute or so. While we wait for this to heat up, little fun fact, the history of the bechamel sauce is somewhat of a contested one. There are 4 reigning theories about bechamel. One thought is La Varenne, the author of the cookbook that calls out the bechamel and sort of put a lot of French cuisine on the map, has credit with being the author of the recipe for bechamel. But it is technically not the first instance we've heard of bechamel in its form. There are references to sauces being made with similar ingredients before that book came out. Another theory is that it comes from Marquis Béchamel, who was a financier in France around the time of the making of this dish. There's no real reason to believe that Béchamel, as the person, made this recipe, though. It may have just been named on behalf of him. There's also a thought that Lord Mornay, who is credited with the creation of the Mornay sauce, which is a bechamel plus cheese, is also the one who created this, since the sauces are so similar. But though they are similar, it is thought that maybe this sauce has a much older history that isn't even French. You see, half a century before La Varenne authored the cookbook that had this sauce inside of it, we have Marie de Medici, who comes from Florence as the bride of Henry IV to France. And she brought with her a huge dowry and servants, including cooks, who brought Florence cuisine with them. And in Florence, there were dishes that utilized a flour and fat mixture, a roux, and combined it with dairy, which would have built a bechamel sauce. Now, would it have been the refined, silky, velvety version that we know today? Probably not. That we can credit to La Varenne. But the original bechamel is probably Italian. So it's been lightly simmering for 10 minutes. We're gonna move this over to another burner. And now we're gonna build our roux. I recommend getting a rounded bottom saucepan for this. Reason being is that it's going to be a lot easier to get around the edges and corners. Bring it up to medium heat, and then we're going to melt 2 tablespoons of butter in there. There are 3 deciding factors for how your bechamel are going to come out. 2 of them happen during the roux process. 1, what is your fat to flour ratio? There are some styles of roux which are going to favor more fat than flour. I remember this being used a lot by Julia Childs in her recipes where she would often have 2 tablespoons of butter to 1 part flour. A classic roux has equal parts flour and fat. So for example, in this, 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 tablespoons of fat. All right, now that our butter is melted, we're gonna come in here with our flour and just whisk it in. Now the next big deciding factor of how your bechamel or any roux is going to come out is the amount of time that you let the roux brown. The longer you simmer it, the more the roux will turn from a light color to a dark brown. And as that's happening, the flavor of the roux is going to get more and more nutty. Because this is a bechamel, we want it to be light. So we don't want to let this cook for more than a minute or 2. We certainly don't want it to get towards a dark brown color. While that's happening, we're going to strain our mixture. Look at that, beautiful, clear, white milk. That's important because we want our bechamel to keep that beautiful, clear color. Turn down the temperature a little bit and then come in here with your whisk and just start stirring the milk into your roux. After a minute, turn the heat off or remove it from the heat and just continue to stir till it is nice and smooth all throughout. And that's your third big deciding factor of how your bechamel is going to come out, is how long do you let it remain in the heat. The longer that you let it remain, the thicker the sauce is going to get. 1 to 2 minutes is going to be a smooth, silky, but dense sauce. 3 to 4 to 5 minutes, and you're gonna end up more with the paste. And there you have it. That's a bechamel. Now, what we wanna do is add some flavoring to it. So we're going to hit it with a nice sprinkle of salt, and we're gonna hit it with the other half of the teaspoon that we bloomed earlier. Now, why are we using white peppercorns? First of all, fun fact, white peppercorns are just black peppercorns, but with the outer layer removed. So they taste exactly the same. And the reason you use white peppercorns in a dish like this is so that you don't mar the beauty of the white, silky, snowy-like color of your bechamel. If you were to use black pepper, it'd have flecks in it and it wouldn't look as nice. You can refrigerate this and use it within a day or 2 in another dish. If you're not immediately using your bechamel, then you're gonna wanna put a layer of parchment paper or covering over the top of it so that a layer of fat doesn't form at the top. If it does, you can just scrape it off. Now we're gonna set our bechamel aside and leave it on low so that it stays nice and warm. Bechamel is considered an ingredient sauce, meaning that most times it's used in something else. It is not a sauce to be used on its own. I think I have an idea of how we can use this as a sauce in one of our dishes. But of course, you can feel free to use it in your lasagna or to make a Mornay sauce and use it in a mac and cheese. But today we're gonna do something a little special. We're gonna make a mushroom bechamel pasta. Let's turn this into a dish. To begin with, a tablespoon of butter. Stuck. Melt in our pan over medium heat. At the same time, prepare your pasta. For this dish, we're gonna be using farfalle, which takes about 11 minutes to cook to al dente. Once your butter is fully melted, add in 8 ounces of your mushroom medley. Now you wanna cook them until all of the mushrooms are sweating, meaning they look kind of wet. And the nice thing about mushrooms is that when they start to sweat, they also start to look for something to refill that missing moisture in them. And we've got just the thing. So we're gonna hit them with a nice pinch of salt, boom. And we're gonna come in with a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of lemon juice. Crank that to high. After about 5 or 6 minutes, the liquid will mostly be evaporated out. We're gonna come in here with the other half of our shallot, let it cook on high for 1 minute. When a minute's up, drop it down to medium and come in with your cooked pasta. Now let's hit this, a bit more salt, some more of our white pepper, give it a quick toss. Turn the heat to medium-low and add the bechamel. Now incorporate the bechamel in there, folding it around and letting it heat back up. And once it's well incorporated, turn off the heat and serve immediately. I have here a spoonful of our original bechamel sauce. Now, in the process of cooking and filming, this cooled a little bit, so it is not the same creamy texture that you would ideally see if you were to just pull a spoonful out. But it's still gonna have all that same great flavor. You've got that creaminess, and it's still quite velvety. You've got that earthy bay leaf thyme, basil in there. A little hint of the shallot and that white pepper makes us a perfect base for so many more sauces. And it's so simple to make. Remember the 3 key things. Bring your milk up to temperature. Create your roux with equal parts fat and flour. Keep your time tight, making sure that your roux doesn't start to brown and that your sauce doesn't get too thick. Master those techniques and you have an amazing bechamel every time. So now let's try the pasta. Oh my gosh, this is so delightful. And it's a surprising style dish because we have the earthy flavors inside of our bechamel and the citrus acidity of the lemon inside the mushrooms. The mushrooms are a burst of flavor and lightness, and the bechamel is that earthy creaminess. This whole dish is simple, quick, easy, but it takes the techniques of making that bechamel and transforms it into something else. Damn! That is delicious. What do you make with your bechamels? Is it lasagnas? Is it mac and cheeses by transforming it into a mornay? Leave a comment down below. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, hit the thumb, do it all. It really helps us out as a starting channel. So a huge thanks to all of you. And be sure to check us out next time as we delve into more of the mother sauces of France. All right, catch you later. Ow, I bit the fork. Is it wrong if I shame eat this sauce? I feel shame.